Hello and welcome to video 5 of the Mastering the Nerves course, Into the Arena. Now throughout this course we've explored how our minds have evolved, how they like to think and maybe get in our way when we want to perform at our best. We've also discussed how we might unhook from our minds and what our values are and what role they might play in helping to guide us as we step into the performance arena. In this video we're going to step back into the arena, whatever our sporting level or context is, and think about how we can, I suppose, bring it all together with what we may already know works for us. And to do that, I want to go full circle and return to Sophie, our aspirational tennis player who we met back in video 2. Over the time of our work together, Sophie became increasingly familiar with her mind's stories and noticed that she wasn't as scared, I suppose, of feeling anxious. She wasn't as scared of her shadow. She had her values of being a strong competitor, avid learner of the game and of total commitment written on her water bottle and saved on her phone's wallpaper, so she could, I suppose, keep them front and centre as guidelines to help her actions or help guide her behaviours. And she described how she was less worried about what could go wrong, and subsequently that created space for her to start thinking about training and competing in ways that were more helpful for her and her mind. Stewie, as by the way she called it. And Stewie, of course, had some ideas. She increasingly began to notice what worked for her during big matches and tough training sessions, and she found that, for example, like routines helped her focus in on what's important to her, embodying her value of dedication, whilst visualization or imagery helped her to, I guess, prepare for tournaments by envisioning herself as being a strong competitor against opponents. Because what Sophie had come to understand was that there is a marked difference between using traditional sports psychology techniques in order to get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings, like avoiding our unwanted thoughts and feelings or being scared of our own shadow, compared to using the same techniques to really help us move in the direction we want to go in, despite the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. So as you hopefully continue to practice unhooking from your mind on a day-to-day basis, start maybe to get curious about what does work for you. You might want to go back and look at the strategies you rated back in, I think it was video 2. Sure, they may not have been helpful in the pursuit of eliminating the unwanted thoughts and feelings that come around with nerves and anxiety. But what about when you're at your best? I wonder how useful they are then in helping you get there. And I guess I want to try and bring together some of the themes we've covered in this course. And I want to invite you to practice a visualization exercise that will last a few minutes. So you're going to need a bit of time and space for you to sit in silence. Although this time I'll be talking a wee bit more. And you can do this again with eyes open or closed, preferably sitting up so you don't like doze off. And obviously, as I've said, somewhere where you can have a bit of peace. And if your mind's saying or perhaps shouting, I can't do visualization, or I've tried it before and it doesn't work, that's okay. That's just the mind doing what minds do. As we've discussed, we can just notice that, name it, and thank it for its contributions. So, get yourself comfy, but not too comfy. And let's begin. And as I said, eyes open or closed, whatever's comfortable for you. And what I want you to do is imagine that today is the day before you need to compete again. So tomorrow, imagine, is a big event for you. And it's an event or a context where you've probably previously felt nervous or anxious. And imagine yourself going through the rest of the day as you would normally and going to bed at a normal time before such an event, whatever that looks like for you. And what I want you to do is imagine that whilst you are sleeping, a miracle happens. And the miracle is that your anxiety or nerves are not as much of a problem for you. They don't bother you as much. They're still there, but you're just willing to take them with you. Now, because you've though been asleep, you don't initially know this miracle has happened when you first wake up. So imagine yourself waking up the following day, tomorrow, the day of this performance event. What would be the first small sign that you'd notice that would suggest that something's different, that would suggest that your nerves or anxiety isn't as much a problem in the lead up to this event? I wonder what that would be for you. Just see if you can picture that. And as you go through your morning routine before the event, what would be different about that? That again would suggest that something's different, that your anxiety or nerves aren't as much a problem. What would you be pleased to notice yourself doing as you go through that routine? What values might you be embodying in how you conduct yourself here? And I wonder who else might notice a difference in you. Maybe just a small, slight difference that would suggest that something has changed, that your anxiety or nerves isn't as much of an issue for you. And now imagine yourself at the location of where this performance will take place. This performance arena. And once more, what's different about how you behave now that your nerves aren't as much a problem for you? What do you do differently that might tell you that something happened, this miracle happened during the middle of the night? What would be different about how you conduct yourself in this performance arena? And now imagine yourself in the moment or moments where you often feel the nerves take over whilst you are competing. But notice once more that, again, it's not as much a problem for you. See if you can imagine yourself still maybe feeling those nerves and having those nervous thoughts. But you're performing well nonetheless. What do you notice about how you're holding or conducting yourself as you imagine this? What personal values are you embodying? And who else might notice? And what might they notice? Finally, imagine the performance, the competition or the event is over. What are you most pleased about having finished it, to the best of your ability despite your nerves and anxiety? What might this say or suggest about you, about your character? That you competed well, in line with your values, despite feeling nervous or anxious. And as we wrap this visualization up, I wonder if it's worth taking a moment to reflect on what image from this exercise most stood out to you, maybe most resonated, or maybe there was something you thought of that was helpfully associated with it. I wonder how you might choose to build on that and make it part of your preparation for your next performance. Again, I wonder what that might look like for you. And there we go. So again, we're using a traditional sports psychology technique or strategy, visualization here, not as a way to help us get rid of, control, eliminate unwanted thoughts and feelings, but instead to, I guess in this case, imagine ourselves embodying our values despite thoughts and feelings that are associated with our nerves and anxiety. Like we've said previously, way back in video 2, there's a lot of things out there that are helpful, but perhaps trying to control and remove and eliminate unwanted thoughts, feelings, and these anxieties and nerves isn't the most helpful way forward. So in many ways, I think this video is a little bit shorter than the other ones, but it's also packed with things that we could maybe go away and reflect about further. I mean, there is a marked difference, as we've just said, about using mental skills or traditional sports psychology techniques to get rid of the unwanted stuff compared to when we're using them to help us embody our values. One is trying to run away, whilst the other is helping us move towards what we care about. And I think as we practice just unhooking from the stories that our mind gives us, maybe we could start getting curious about what seems to help us move towards our values, helps us be at our best in our sport, despite feeling nervous and anxious. So, in that last point there, and as we just finished, visualization is one such tool that can help us do that. And I think the key here for me in that visualization script is that it acknowledges the presence of that nerves and anxiety rather than this nirvana or heavenly or far off future hoped for land that we'll be performing without our nerves and anxiety. Because we're human and our brains always, wherever our legs go, our brains go with them.